Hello, my name is Karen Rupp, and this is Natalie Gordon. We work at the Utah State Board of Education in the School Children's Trust section. The purpose of this video is to provide training for charter schools and charter governing boards for the School Land Trust program. Natalie?
Well, let's get started. So what is the School Land Trust program? Let me just tell you, at statehood, the federal government kept a large portion of land in Utah, and they knew that we would have a hard time taxing our way to a great public education system, so they gave us some of that land back. And they divided the state into townships, which are 36 square miles, and they gave the schools 4 sections in that township, so 4 square miles, to support public education. This was given to the schools in trust. So the schools are the beneficiary, and the state is the trustee who manages this land to make money for the schools. The lands are managed by SITLA, the School and Institutional Trust Lands Administration, and their only job is to make money for public schools. If you look at this map of the state, you can see this pattern. The yellow lands are the lands that are managed by BLM. And if you kind of look in there, you can see the blue scattered sections. Those are trust lands. And then because of reservations and forests and national parks, some of the lands have been blocked up in other areas so that they can be held in trust as well. And those are areas where there's a great reason to block it up so that we can use that land in a bunch to make money for schools, like maybe oil development or some real estate down by St. George. Those blocks have been very helpful. So let's talk about how the land makes money for schools. The land makes money just any way that land makes money. So they have oil and gas development, they have hard rock mining, agricultural leases for grazing or for other agricultural purposes, real estate development, both commercial and residential, and all of that is what SITLA does, and they generate those revenues from the activities on the lands. Then they take their expenses out, and everything else is put into the Permanent State School Fund, and that is managed by the School and Institutional Trust Fund Office, and they have a diversified portfolio that then is held in trust. The only thing that comes out of that is their expenses to manage the fund, our section's expenses at the State Board of Education, and then the annual distribution, which is a percentage of the earnings from that fund that come to the School Land Trust program. 20 years ago, the fund was $96 million. Today, it is over $2.4 billion. And that is money that is held just for the schools, and the principals never touched. This year, schools received $74 million, and let's see what's going to happen next year. Next year, schools will receive almost $83 million. That's divided up so that each school gets enough to run their program and make meaningful academic improvement in their school. The charter school distribution is figured by taking a percentage of the money that equals a percentage of how many students are in charter schools. Right now that's about 11%. So we take the first 11% of that $74 million and we set it aside for charter schools. Then from that amount, we calculate a base distribution. The base distribution is 0.4% of the total distribution, and all schools receive at least the base. The minimum amount that a charter school received this year is about $30,000. The rest is distributed on a per pupil basis, so larger schools will receive more money. New schools do receive money in their first year. It's based on their projected fall enrollment, and in the second year we adjust it. So if your projected enrollment was low and you had more students attend, then we give you extra money your second year. If the projected enrollment was high and you're still filling up that school, then you might get a little bit less money that second year. So now let's have Karen tell us about the School Land Trust program.
The School Land Trust program was actually authorized by the legislature, and every public and charter school does receive funding. So the Charter Governing Board can serve as the council if the board membership has at least a majority of a two-parent majority. So here are some things that you want to consider if you're going to use your governing board as the Trust Land Council. The governing board has to have at least two more parents of students who currently attend the school than other members of the board. That is a criteria. As the council, the board will be required to prepare and approve the School Land Trust Plan. The third thing is the governing board has to follow the Open and Public Meetings Act, including actions taken as the Trust Lands Council, the same as what you do when you hold a board meeting. The fourth thing that you want to consider that the governing must post on the Utah Public website or the school's website a notice of the meetings, including the agenda, the date, the time, and place, and make available the minutes and recordings of the board meetings. And finally, the governing board must post on the website the names of the governing board with contact information along with their bylaws and charter agreement. This gives parents the opportunity, if they have questions about the School Land Trust program, they know who to call. And so that information is really important for that information to be on your website, and we would encourage you to do that. The second thing, the board, if you don't meet the criteria to serve, the board serve as the Trust Land Council, then you have to establish a procedure for the Trust Land Council. And here are some things that you need to consider. You will be the one that will oversee the election of the Charter Trust Land Council. And keep in mind, the Charter Trust Land Council is required to have the two-parent majority of students who attend the schools more than other members of the council.
That's a really important part of this.
It is.
That's definitely something the legislature thinks is important.
Thank you, Natalie. That's true. The second one, the Charter Trust Land Council is required to follow, different from what the board does, the School Community Council Open and Public Meetings requirements, which is found in the code, which is listed there. And feel free to look at it to see what the differences are. And there are some differences for the Trust Land Council as to opposed to the governing board. The governing board is required to train the Charter Trust Land Council. The board is required to review and approve the council's plan. So these are some things you want to consider when you are approving the plan. The number one thing that we are asking you to really look at is to look at the data that tells you where your school is and what your critical academic needs are. So that's the first thing that we want you to do, is to do a data dive and see where you are. The plan has to be specific, measurable, attainable, and student-centered, and ensure that all expenditures are appropriate and allowed. Those are the things that the board needs to consider. The one good thing about the School Land Trust program is that it can be amended. The intent of the legislature is they want this plan to work for your schools and your students. And so you may find when you look at the plan that from the time that you prepared it to when it's being implemented, there may be some additional needs that you have found that make a difference for your students. And so you have the opportunity throughout the school year when you're implementing the plan to go to the plan, scroll to the bottom. There is a place that you can click on an amendment and add an amendment to that. You can add a funding category to any academic area. Keep in mind, you have to have a goal, and you can add that new goal. And again, look at your funding throughout the year to make sure that you are going to use all of your funds in that particular school year. There is an allowable way that you can carry over money, but we want you to keep in mind, first of all, that the students generate these funds, and they should be spent on the students who generate them. So we would encourage you to look at your funding at almost every meeting you have, to look at your plan and say, you know what, it looks like we got a great deal on purchasing technology that we were not planning on, and or that you may have determined that you wanted to use tutors, and the tutors are not spending as much time as what you anticipated. So you're looking at that. You can tell that by the end of the year you are going to have some carryover. By mid-year, we would ask you to please look at that plan and determine if an amendment needs to be made.
And please remember, everything that the Charter Trust Land Council does is advisory to the governing board. So if you have a council, instead of using your governing board as the council, then the council will then suggest an amendment, they'll propose it, but it needs to be approved by the governing board.
Thank you, Natalie. Keep in mind that there are certain things that you can and certain things that you can't spend money, trust funds on. And so please make sure that you're looking at the expenditures. Some of the things that is not allowed are fixed cost of doing business, such as purchasing intercom or phones, desks and chairs. Those are things of cost of doing business. They don't pay for construction or maintenance facilities, security, or athletics. They also do not pay for non-academic in-school, co-curricular, or extracurricular activities. Keep in mind, the legislature very specifically said that these funds are to be used for academic, not non-academic. You also can use money for behavior interventions. However, the great caution is that it has to be tied to an academic goal. So if you're going to use the behavioral, please make sure when you do your plan, it is tied to an academic. You can't just have a separate goal for behavior. It has to be tied to an academic.
I saw a great example of this yesterday when I had a school that was submitting an amendment because they hadn't needed to hire the aide because their fourth grade classes were smaller. So instead of hiring the fourth grade aide, they added to their goal to include a behavioral recess kind of activity that would help structure their recesses so that the students would go out, get all their energy out, and then be able to come back in not being bullied, not feeling overwhelmed, and be ready to learn. And this is a data-driven program that they found that is going to improve academics as well. So they've added it to their goal to improve their scores, but they realize it's a behavioral part of the whole goal.
And we have seen, especially in the secondary areas, of using the funds, partial funds for counselors. And as long as, again, you can tie that to an academic and have it measurable, that's certainly something you may want to consider. The other thing is for character ed and leadership. This is a limited goal, however. It's limited now to $7,000, and it has to be part of the academic goal. So if you're going to use it for that, make sure that it fits within the criteria of the plan. The last one is one that we really want to emphasize, that sometimes it gets a little tricky. And this is regarding rewards and incentives. Regardless of your plan, whatever it might be, whether it's behavioral, academic, or whatever else, when you come to rewards and incentives, there is a $2 limit per incentivized student per school year. It is very limited. So please make sure that if you're going to do that, that you clearly keep track so that you don't go over that particular amount of money. There are 2 times in the year that you really are going to be involved in looking at your school plan. The first one is the fall reporting. We're going to be talking about dates that are required to have these things happen. These dates are not arbitrary. They are in either a statute or state board rule and need to be followed. So come fall, October the 1st, by then, your business administrator enters the expenditures for the prior year. Your books will have been closed by then, and so he should be able to have an accurate accounting to put on the School Land Trust website what monies were spent for trust lands. And that's by October 1st. Then by October 20th, you come into play where you're going to be reporting on 3 different things. The first one is you need to put in your council membership form. Make sure that when you put it in there, if you don't have the correct membership, the numbers that need to be there, it could display an error message, and you need to figure out what it is that you have done incorrectly so that you follow the law when it comes to the council membership. That's one of the things that has to be done. The second one is that you're going to report on the principal's assurance form. This is simply a form that assures you are making an assurance that the council is seated according to the law. It is a very simple form, mostly yes and no answers. It doesn't take a long time, but this is one that has to be completed. And finally, the final report on the prior year's implementation. And by this time, you will see by October 1st, the business administrator has entered the expenditures. That will appear on the final report. And now you are going to be putting in the narrative and your financial, how you say the money was spent. You're going to have to report on the narrative of the goal, the measurement, and how you actually did spend the money. And so we would encourage you to, if there is a discrepancy, please work with your business administrator. There always are opportunities that there could have been some errors made so that there is an agreement of how the money is spent. And if we just need an explanation. If there is a difference, we just need an explanation of what it is. So that is very important.
And those final reports are viewable on our website, and also you need to have a link on your website to it. So please make sure that you're clear and concise, that you're not writing a ton of information, but that the information you're providing is certainly not student specific ever, and also that the information you're providing is information that the public can access to see how well you're doing in meeting these school goals.
Thank you, Natalie. The second one, the series of reporting that comes is in the spring. And all of these things have to be done before April 1st. And this, again, is a hard deadline. So here's what needs to happen by that time. The very first thing that's going to come up is a progress report. It is a very simple report. All you have to put in is one number. And what you're doing is you are estimating in the spring how much money you are going to spend by the end of the school year. And that's the number you need to put in. So it's a one number. So again, I would work with your business administrator and say, are we on target to spend our money? Or are we going to have some leftover? We still want you to look at it to see, are there other things that we could use in this final push for the end of the school year? Keep in mind the amendment process. That would be helpful. The next thing is the school plan. And this plan is what you're going to be preparing for the next school year that will be implemented for those students. It's going to require you to come up with goals and expenditures. So keep in mind, again, how important the data dive is to really look where your school is, what your needs are. This is the beauty of the program, is this is to be what your school needs, not what we say you need. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to prepare a goal. And then you're going to have to do a measurement. and you're going to have to be able to measure. How are you going to measure how this goal is going to be implemented? And then the final thing is the action plan. This is where you're going to tell us how you're going to spend your money and how it's going to be implemented. Are you going to hire teachers? Are you going to hire tutors? Are you going to purchase textbooks? Are you going to purchase STEM products? Whatever it might be, this is where you're going to put all of that information in. Again, as Natalie said, we don't need a book. What we need is you to tell us specifically what you're going to do and how this is going to make a difference for your school. The last thing that we need you to do is the signature form. This can be done in two different ways. The principal can click to go to the council membership. He can click on a button that will send you an email, and it will go to each member of your council's personal email, and they can just go in and select it and say, yes, I did work and help prepare the plan. It doesn't say that they agree with everything. It just indicates that they were part of the process. The other way that you may want to consider that may be easier in the long run is that you know at the last meeting or where you are going to vote to be able to approve the plan. You may want to print off the signature paper and then have everyone there sign a copy, sign that, and then upload it to the website. One or two of either one of those has to be done in order for you to complete the process.
And another note about our April 1st reporting, that's when it needs to be completed. So if you are a governing board that is reviewing the work of a charter school trust land council, you need to make sure that they have submitted it before the 1st and that you have time to review and approve it during an open and public meeting so that it can be turned in by the 1st. Also with the signature form, if you've got a council, then the council will be the ones that sign the signature form. But if your governing board is acting as your charter school council, they'll be the ones that do that form.
Thank you. We have a lot of new charter schools coming online all the time, and they have an extended time for a new plan since they're a brand new school, and they have to have their process completed by November the 1st. And that, again, that is their plan, their membership, and their principal's assurance. Those are the three things that new schools will be required to do. Our website is www.schoollandtrust.org, and there is a lot of additional training materials, information on our website, and we would encourage you to visit it, and you can review things and look at all the additional information available to you. And finally, it is our privilege to be able to review the plans to be part of the School Land Trust program. This is a phenomenal opportunity for the schools to be able to determine their needs and make the appropriate changes and suggestions of how it's going to impact their students and your students. So please feel free to contact us. Natalie and I are always available to answer any questions. Good luck to you, and please let us know how we can help.
Thank you.